Welcome back, everybody, to OWCS EMEA. Let's get straight into the next matchup because we know that you guys don't want to wait. I'm Ash, and I'm joined by Mitch and Matt. And looking at this Qadsiah versus Twisted Minds match here for our second match of today, I'm really excited for this. This is Qadsiah that made it all the way to Champions Clash. They managed to take a map off of an insane team within Team Falcons as well, which was honestly pretty shocking in that upper bracket quarterfinal there, Mitch.
Very rare.
I mean, some friendly fire from Virtus Pro there towards the end.
We don't talk about it. We don't have to talk about it.
Look, honestly, I was pretty impressed with that map take for this Qadsiah team, right? But the strangest thing, I guess, about this is that they played Tread that entire tournament, right? They obviously always had the option between Tread and Ziad, and we felt that with Ziad, this team was really popping off. Like, Labda had an insane showing on HitScan at the tournament as someone who was previously mostly like a Pharah player. So the front line of this team, are great, but the DPS line really are quite exciting to watch. They've now settled on Ziad as their go-to tank. I think that's the correct decision. It was confusing, right, that we didn't see Ziad in Hangzhou, and there were sort of a couple of rumors about why that was the case, but it looks like, Junkbuck says in an interview, like, we had some things we had to set right in this team in the break, without going into too much detail. So, this team, you would expect them to hit the ground running because they've got this kind of roster that really can pop off. And, Kellex is coming in. I think Haku is actually might be more of a backup here now. So, slight retooling, but expecting big things from this team.
Yeah, I mean, Kellex has been a pretty consistent player over his time in Overwatch, right? So a good pickup for Qadsiah. I think, like how you mentioned, Mitch, really impressed with how good Labda was there. And for Twisted Minds, right? You get KSA back here, Funny Astro still kind of like main the back line. Then UB and Quartz, like, this is like the main DPS duo from that Saudi Arabian World Cup team, right? So potentially see them kind of go. I think one of the more surprising things, right, from EMEA Stage 1 was like how Labda was able to go head to head with Quartz, like on the hit scan roles, right? If there's one player though I'm really excited to see potentially play Freya, it would be Quartz. I mean, he's just absolutely sick at all those types of characters.
Yeah, I mean, this team is like also has an option to tank with TVNT also listed as a sub, but KSA coming over from the Ultimates, a move that, like, I feel like we could have seen coming, for a while. Sort of reunited with these players now. I'm curious though, because KSA did leave a roster that featured certain players that he's now going alongside of, and there was a bit of acrimony there in the past. But
you can make friends again.
Well, I hope so, because
I've made friends with people that I haven't liked in the past, right?
burying the hatchet, we call them that.
Yeah, burying the hatchet. Yep. There you go. Water under the bridge, right, Ash?
Sure. I believe it. I don't know. I've heard some things about you, Matt, but I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, he's got a bad
maybe for Mitch. But I'm gonna let you guys hash it out as we get into game here. It's Twisted Minds versus Qadsiah.
Oh, that's everybody's so mean to me.
I just don't hold back when I tell people what to expect from you, Matt, because it's a singular experience. You know what I mean? Like, I wish I'd told Jaws what to expect.
With my singular brain cell, it's a singular experience. Just,
I mean, look, moving away from sort of your IQ perhaps and onto this game, I think that, like, both of these teams were. We felt like last stage were definitely in the running, while Qadsiah actually were in 4th place as we got into those playoffs. They shocked us all by getting that final, getting 2 maps off Virtus Pro. And we realized, this is actually a team that is able to go on a run. And Junkbuck has this kind of reputation as being someone who can really craft like a great strategy with the players he has available. So, like, we now expect much more from this team than we used to.
I also think though that, like, seeing the Ultimates play as well as they did probably scares both of these teams, right? Because the Ultimates puts it together at the end of Stage 2, right? They end up getting 3rd, but it was really, I think, these two teams in terms of, like, how they were able to climb the ladder in the EMEA that really kind of benefited from that, right? Like, Genji obviously falls, like, early on in those Stage 1 playoffs, but these two teams benefited in a major way. So with now the Ultimates seemingly they could live up to their potential, right? With some of these changes to these rosters, like on the fringe, like how can they advance and get even better here in Stage 2?
Yeah, obviously Ben Best coaching this Twisted Minds roster, a player with a pretty storied history in Overwatch, but he's going up against one of the most feared coaches, I think, you know, in the world in Junkbox. So that's also a fun matchup to track here. Viewer predictions, honestly, yeah, pretty close. And I'm surprised. I do think the Twisted Minds are going to look stronger with like that stabilizing aspect of KSA added to the team. But after Qadsiah turned up in playoffs last stage, I am still surprised to see it being as close as it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's typically like a pretty large, you know, amount of chat that is like pretty heavily behind Twisted Minds. Twisted Minds and the viewer predictions, you know, in hell, they'd be undefeated potentially, you know, if we were going off of viewer predictions. But to see Qadsiah, I mean, that's people obviously impressed with Qadsiah being able to take a map off of Falcons at Champions Clash, right? Putting a lot of stock into that. So map number 1 will be Qadsiah's pick. We will also see them get their first ban. So we'll see how that plays out.
Also, a fun matchup, I think. Labda versus Quartz, potentially in that sort of hit scan role. These guys have like rolled together for a long time. They really know each other. So first, this looks like likely a protect here at DPS as the Tor ban comes out first. Hazard will be taken away from Qadsiah though.
Interesting. Well, you know, we haven't seen obviously any Hazard with our first series of the day, right? But Hazard obviously is always, really since he's kind of been in the game, like always on the fringe of being in the meta. The Torb definitely seems more of like a protect angle, I think, from Qadsiah, because Torb, I mean, Torb actually is like really good against Hazard, right? So if there was really any threat of, you know, Torb being in the game, right, you wouldn't actually, if you got rid of the Torb, it would most likely to be to play Hazard, right, not to just get rid of him. So
we're seeing that. We're seeing a bit of Hazard, right? We saw it over in the OWCS career. So he's still very much like a well-balanced and viable pick to bring into some of these games. So that could have been a reactive ban there from Twisted Mind saying, okay, we don't want to give this to you.
As we add more heroes and time moves on, it just seems like the newer heroes do a little bit of everything, right? Where like Hazard has pretty good mobility, not like extremely high, you know, vertical mobility, but still can kind of like traverse the map quite easily. Has like damage reduction, pretty good. You know, damage up close, right? The ability, not exactly a shield, but the ability to put like a wall up. And then an ultimate that does like AoE, like, or coned CC. I mean, still like just a very strong kit overall, right? So you're going to be able to work that into a variety of different comps. You compare that to poor old Winston, right? He can jump and put down a bubble. That's about it.
I mean, okay, I think it might be selling my boy short a little bit, but that's fine. We've got plenty of kit for you guys.
He can put his shield up and he can die. Those are his 2 main abilities.
Yeah, I mean, if you call being able to die an ability, that's sort of fair. Yeah. Bro, this is mad primal rage erasure. I'm not going to lie. We just saw how effective Winston was.
One
of
Reinhardt's key abilities is to spectate his teammates. You can spectate them off.
No, I mean, his key ability is to have third-person view. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Like before Stadium came around, bro, that was kind of groundbreaking. Other people had to emote to get third-person view, which left them very vulnerable. So I think that is pretty sweet. You guys, we got some drops for you. If you're watching live on either Twitch or YouTube, make sure you connect your Battle.net account to have access to those drops. We're running them over 2 separate time periods. See, May 8th through 28th is that first lot, couple sprays, icon name card in there, and then 29th through the 15th, of course, of June, we'll have another set. So make sure you collect that up. If you stick with us for, you know, this weekend, you'll be, I'd say, most of the way there.
Really well on your way.
Yeah, make sure your accounts are connected and you'll be getting yourself some free stuff. That's called passive income, folks.
Yeah, I mean, we got 3 games of NA. We got, today we got 3 games of EMEA tomorrow. So you just hang out with all of us, right? You'll start earning. You'll start having some of that swag in game. I gotta get that Street Fighter swag though when that drops. I mean, those skins are fire. This is like the first collab that, like, right off the bat, I don't have to have it explained to me. You know, Gundam I kind of get. They're all mechs, right? I kind of get that one. Street Fighter, I'm like, hey, I know those characters.
Yeah, obviously Gundam's not that deep, you know. There are definitely undertones of like civil unrest.
Remind me, I do know Doki Doki now. I do know that now. I know that now. Yeah. Yep, I've been informed. But
anyway, if you guys want to know what Matt's talking about, Street Fighter collab and Overwatch, you better believe it. And yes, Sigma is M Bison. Let's cut to our little teaser to see what is coming in terms of that exciting collab.
the stadium. Let's get a look at our competitors. The first round can't get here quick enough. And we're diving right in. They barely clinched the win this round. This is a round you won't want to miss. Against all odds, they've won it all! You love to see it, folks. Something for my trouble.
The hunt begins. Run or hide, it won't matter in the end. I'll get quite the payout for you. I've always liked a challenge. I always deliver. Goodbye.
Cheers, love! The cavalry's here! Nocturna is leading the Hollow Hearts to corrupt the world with woe! Only our combined power can stop her. We are the heroes of heart! Brigitte, the heart of strength! Amelie, the heart of grace! Kiriko, the heart of passion! Freya, the heart of courage! And I am Juno, the heart of hope! Together, we will take down the Hollow Hearts! The Full Heart Beam!
I run this show.
My spirit grows strong.
The doctor is in.
The lone rose gets plucked.
You are under my guard.
Sir, I think you should see this.
Damien Barbosa, Mashiti Betty, and Sahil Bedia, aka the Wolf. All bounties recently posted, all neatly delivered, all very, very interesting.
Interesting. I thought you'd be more surprised than that, Max. I'd call you Marquis, but dark web monikers are so impersonal.
I see. Giffen, I presume. And you come bearing gifts.
Not gifts, bounties.
Yes, bounties. And my cargo that seems to have gone missing. Might you also have something to do with its absence?
Considering there was a problem with payment last time, I helped myself.
There was a problem? Oh my. Perhaps I should fire my accountant. Speaking of surprises, I am curious how you found them. And so quickly. I thought you worked alone.
I do.
Well then, please, enlighten me.
What's the tell? Your targets were nipped. And I'm not. So here we are.
Your storytelling leaves much to be desired. Instead of a story, perhaps a demonstration. Very good, very good. Expensive, but good, good. Here, this is for the bounties. All of them. Keep the cargo. Consider it a bonus.
You wanted me to come here tonight. This was all a test?
It was a calculation. I had to be sure you were right for this.
Right for what?
For a problem no one else has been able to solve. I think you might find it particularly interesting.
I've got other jobs, Max. You understand.
Indeed I do, Giffen. Or should I say, Freya. But I also recognize those moments, rare as they are, when opportunity knocks.
You should have led with this. Leave him to me.
Welcome back, folks. We are not too far away from jumping into our second game of EMEA today. Of course, this is week 1, so if you're joining us just now, you've not missed a whole lot outside of the Ultimates tearing Genji limb from limb, but this second matchup is one worth looking at as well. I'm curious to see what our Qadsiah and Twisted Minds have in store for us, and we're not going to have to wait too much longer to jump in.
Yeah, we'll be able to get back into this lobby shortly. Apologize for the wait. You know, it was a lobby issue. Mitch wanted to redo his hair. He wanted to redo the intros, so he wanted a little bit of break. So you know that's what we were waiting for here. Also coming up is a stadium show match at DreamHack Dallas. That'll be pretty sweet. I went to DreamHack Dallas last year. I think you're going this year, Mitch. You'll be there. Yep. So if you wanna check that out, make sure you go to DreamHack Dallas. You see that link at the bottom, dhk.gg/stadium. Go in there, see some of your favorite creators play Stadium. It's pretty awesome mode.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna stop by if I have a chance. Down there 1 p.m. Pacific, but 3 p.m. local time. That will be down there at DreamHack Dallas on the main stage as well. So, well worth checking out. That's well, yeah, that's the Overwatch presence over there. Should still be good. Obviously, nothing on the OWCS front, but always worth a trip down. If you're local, especially, come say hi. I'm sure I'll float around. If you can find me, we'll get a photos on. Also
pretty sweet, you know, awesome timing, right? The Street Fighter collab here with Overwatch. I know he competed last year and then also this year, but Alec, the associate game director, he actually competes at EVO. And he won his pool play game on Street Fighter. So just kind of coming full circle there. Kind of sick. With you know, Alec being able to play.
Yeah, we got hobbies. We got hobbies out here.
The Blanca goat, Alec Dawson, showing up, taking the collab to the next level.
Obviously, Oasis was our first map. We did get our bans already here. The Tor ban responded to by a Hazard ban. What are you all like? Yeah, are you competing on the side in any titles anymore, Matt? Or are you sort of you hanging up the sticks?
It's tough, man, because like I start getting into a game and I'm like, I know, maybe I just kind of start no life and then I gotta put it down a little bit. You know, I'm at the point where I'm so elderly, like, you know, a long gaming session, your hands are like all creaky. I know, very difficult to keep moving after that, right?
Okay, sure. I mean, I'm getting on as well. I can't say I've experienced that. I'm more of a trading card game kind of guy. I like.
Well, I mean, you're not getting hurt doing that. I mean,
no. Well, you know, you can get pretty heated across the table sometimes.
You start swinging. Yeah, I mean, you start swinging at people. I guess you start.
I mean, they see me coming. I'm obviously just so massive, and I like, you know, I have to walk sideways through doors that no one would dare. Not when we sit down and play cards. You know what I mean? But that's my little side hobby. Keeps my brain sharp. You know what I mean? So
we were almost in the game, guys. We swear we were right there. It will be Qadsiah Twisted Minds here at some point with the tour ban for Qadsiah and then Twisted Minds with the Hazard ban. So bans are staying the same, maps staying the same. Just waiting to get in.
You like sports games, don't you? You play a lot.
I do. I play all different types of games. Unlike you know, you kind of just stick to one genre. I play a little bit of everything. I dabble a little bit everywhere. Wow.
How many games do I cast, Matt?
I mean, well, you know, I would use cast.
I need 2 hands to count it. I need 2 hands, bro.
Cast for what you do is like that's pretty loose. You know, sometimes you just kind of. You show up, you throw the accent on, you scream a little bit, and then you're out.
It's so crazy, man.
You know,
it's so crazy. Yeah, no, look, I don't game as much as I would like to these days, but I'd like to think I'm getting across a wide range of different genres. Do you know what I mean? I don't play the sports ones though. Maybe I should check that out. You know, throw some hoops with you in game or something.
They're a good time because I don't want to go and play sports in real life because then I could actually physically.
My knees are just gonna blow up, bro. Like I ain't about that.
Yeah, I've already had my knee reconstructed twice. I ain't trying to do a third time. So, you know, we stick to you know, getting that sports fix through my monitor in the darkness of my cave here. So. We will see.
Alex always does this, assuming it's him, with that like the incognito mode on.
Yeah, that will be Kellex for Twisted Minds. So
Honestly,
talent
I thought that's what Frothy Philly was doing the first time I saw them in game. I genuinely thought that was like a generated name, and it's just so memorable now, you know.
And you said his name, and he's back. It will be Maga here for Twisted Minds. Ziyad here going up against Qadsiah. So very interesting match here we got sorted, where it'll be Qadsiah. They're running the kind of, it's like a similar shell, right, in terms of the comp, but they're running the Ramatra here instead of the Maga.
And Yubi, every bit the sim specialist that you would expect. A lot of these sort of control maps, we see them come out here, and it's pretty dangerous. You can see this Qadsiah team sort of pivot on a dime very quickly positionally with the use of those TPs coming at the right time. Yubi's got a good sort of mind for how to use those to set up, and a great start for Qadsiah. Obviously, Yubi able to really shred front lines and make use of that Ramatra shield there just to charge up.
Absolutely. No, the Ramatra saves that Nemesis form, becomes pretty sturdy, and then Yubi's damage starts to ramp behind it, right? As it'll be KSA just gets on the point, just tries to keep it contested there. Some big damage put down by Ziyad, as he is, though, under a lot of pressure using that cardiac overdrive, just desperately trying to stay up.
Got good value out of it, though, as well. He's able to counteract a lot of the damage coming his way by continuing just to go to work with both miniguns. And they're forced off the point for a time, Twisted Minds, because they got to play Ziyad's life. It's the most important thing for them here. The problem is that they already lost control, and there it is. Quartz says to Labda, I am the original Saudi Arabian hitscan player. Do not challenge me, friend.
I do like, as well as we see an orbital array come in here for Twisted Minds. We talked about how, you know, teams in EMEA, maybe they need to kind of vary their game going in to international competition.
What?
It does not seem likely with these two teams. Landon goes wild there on the Juno, goes over the high ground there with a glide and just becomes a DPS.
Yo, you won't take the headshot perk for your major perk. You won't do it, brother. Oh, man. That was sick. Okay, great little moment there. Now Qadsiah forced off the point finally. Order Ray, though, to work with. And an overclock for Quartz. He's going to let that one go straight away. Forced out of line of sight somewhat, but Twisted Minds acquiesce by moving right within his effective range. Labda, though, from behind that enlarged, engorged, very wide shield there. Is able to take a shot back and clean him up. And this is nice from Labda, re-establishing himself as a true contender for the hit scan throne.
Yeah, fantastic. Doesn't even need to use the overclock, right? That's just a charge up railgun shot there on a flank. So Quartz doesn't get anything with his overclock. You're going to end up with the annihilation here for KSA. Maybe like a wall here from Yubi kind of like mitigates some of the damage that comes on through. But it seems like Twisted Minds, you can play quite aggressive right behind, you know, maybe a Ziyad stomp into a checkmate blade, right? And make a play for the back line, as this will be a cage fight used here as well.
Yeah, annihilation though popped inside the cage. I think Ziyad might be regretting this just a little bit. Landed and Calyx couldn't keep them standing. Now Qadsiah bully their way in and maybe get what they want. Yubi also made use of the barrier there in that previous fight, making it harder for Labda to achieve his level of value. And this has stayed very competitive now. Qadsiah halfway, now in control.
Well, you know, we'll have to get it switched, right? Because the
teammates are flipped over. That did my head in.
The names are flipped. So it is Qadsiah in the lead, as Twisted Minds is in the orange, right? So we'll get that flipped for you guys here.
I was like, yo, checkmate on Twisted Minds? What's going on? All right, we're good.
Yeah.
We'll get that. We'll get that sorted for you guys. Timber goes down early. Here's a rally from Funny Astro. Forces checkmate away. He didn't pull the blade until just now, though. Sees an opportunity to get in there. Once the shield bash came out, he knew it was go time. Deflect the torpedoes as well. Qadsiah now on hopefully a run home for them. They've got a rally just around the corner.
Yeah, so Qadsiah here in control of the point, as Twisted Minds will be on the attack. As Twisted Minds make a change here, they have KSA go over and play the Maga. So it'll be an overclock here for Quartz. Okay, now everything's gone. So we got Quartz with an overclock here. So he's going to try and put down to some shots. Yeah, so he connects with one. Yubi picks one up as well. But the point is, heavily favored here to Qadsiah, where it looks like you're just going to have to throw bodies at it here for Twisted Minds.
We're going to touch easily enough Twisted Minds. Should be able to set up here. Ziyad knows that it's pretty cooked. This will put us in a mutual final fight scenario with an orbital ray at the ready for Twisted Minds. It's going to be a Lucio here for Calyx. Getting to the point as quickly as possible. Maybe an overclock for Labda here. Gonna have to get into the fight pretty quickly now. Find some stall. Checkmate doesn't want to give himself up too cheaply, but has to touch. Chunk down to half. I think that's fine. He'll accept that. He'll be back in the fight sooner or later, but there it is. The rather turret set up by Yubi in the corner. Ziyad just gets burned down by the subject of far too much of that damage. And Twisted Minds here managed to break back into the game from behind and find a convincing victory in this first round.
Yeah, it becomes very difficult to kind of like work into some of those sim turrets, right? As you're kind of going in towards the point at the end. So although we talk about all the different variation that potentially EMEA is going to need moving forward, does not really matter here in this matchup, right? Both of these teams clearly don't want to play any sort of dive here, at least at the start. Really looking at like a standard EMEA Overwatch style of game.
Quartz with 8.5k is pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Just you know, returning to that position of dominance with 0 death. Yeah, we're only the 1 death, excuse me, over the course of the round. Very strong showing. KSA, you know, on the Ramatra has to deal with Ziyad, kind of work around that Malga presence, as the latter definitely has a little more staying power in the front line. Twisted Minds do well, and this little sim pocket pick has worked out well. On a map like this as well, I think there's a ton of applications, especially in terms of accessing the high ground easily.
And to remind you guys as well, for Qadsiah, talent as top, so that is Kellex playing, you know, has the streamer mode on. So we get some interesting names from him throughout the series, as he actually pushes straight through with Ziyad, gets the benefits of you know, land and speed ring there, and just takes control of high ground, just wipes the floor with TM.
Great start for them here. Getting checkmate rolling is going to be pretty important. Remember, Genji, you know, playing without the nano, which is, we've already seen that obviously earlier on today. Extremely viable, very reasonable, but Checkmate has to respect things like Funny Astro's, you know, empowered shield bash during rally, the damage of Yubi just sort of blowing him up. Ziyad cops a face full of damage early. KSA, of course, on the Malga this time around. Quickly trying to assert himself on the point. Stomp won't quite connect, and it's going to be a cardiac overdrive here for Qadsiah. KSA has to reciprocate there. The damage is good, though. Funny Astro just gets blown up there by Kellex. About the true veterans in that brig roll. And now Qadsiah will string another fight together.
Very difficult here for Twisted Minds to get any type of control, right? Qadsiah going to kind of set the pace here and really kind of dictate where all of these fights are going to happen. Where for TM, you look across the board, these fights are also going so fast for Qadsiah. You're not able to build up to anything that could result in a fight win. Maybe you take some space here. No, use like Yubi's TP even as like a threat. Yeah, you see it kind of used here potentially, right? And that's going to actually move Qadsiah back, even though they don't actually use the TP. And that's actually a double knockdown there, and then they end up killing Ziyad.
And Lab is trying to invest, I think, in trying to kill Quartz. Got a big chunk damage on him earlier on. This overclock is going to be enough on its own to force them back. Remember, 150 charge, very good, especially against these Malga comps. Without shields, Labda knows he can really turn it up to 15 and pump those right clicks in.
So still, I mean, this is just dominating here from Qadsiah. You're going to have the, you know, cage fight here in combination with a blade. You actually use Landon's orbital array as well. So everything thrown in here for Qadsiah.
Okay, so cage fight gets blown up pretty quickly. Quartz just, you know, tries to bring it down, but Qadsiah just want to drag this fight out a little bit longer. Simple over the edge here. Twisted Minds are going to have one good fight left, but KSA's got to be hard pressed to get a good cage fight here. Qadsiah may look to disengage away from this, play point, kite it somewhat, especially with Quartz coming in with an overclock.
Now they read exactly where Yubi's coming from. Checkmate put some damage into him. That's going to force recall as well. They do trigger OT.
Yubi gets it done at least. Has to come back without a recall for another 4 to 6 seconds, I think. It's going to be a cage fight now on the point itself, but Quartz goes down earlier. And KSA, no one's really looking at him right now. Checkmate is obviously shackled in the middle of the point, but can dash up to the high ground here and will hope to get healed, but Simple chases him down with those pulsar torpedoes. It may not matter. Yubi there playing on the periphery. Labda gets caught out. Good stop from KSA. Twisted Minds might be able to flip this if they can just stay clear of Ziyad. So healthy right now is this Malga. A fight in the front line. KSA couldn't get the healing he needed, though, as Landon comes back. The torpedoes are connecting. Bloodthirsty as always. The Juno from Qadsiah should give them the extra boost they need to even up the map.
And Ziyad having that cardiac overdrive there, being able to just kind of generate all of that, you know, healing that the Malga can provide. They are not going to be able to cut through that, as Twisted Minds make some changes there towards the end just to get on to the point. So it will be 1-1 as we head into the final round. Curious as well, because we did see the Torb and the Hazard ban. We were like, oh, like, you know, maybe these kind of just don't really impact the game. Maybe there's a scenario where either of these teams would like to play that against the Malga, right? We've seen Nightmare in North America, well, Nightmare in Stage 1, play the hazard into Maga-based composition. So potentially could have been some type of counter playing around. As take a look at some of the stats at this point. Is Zia putting down some big damage on the Maga.
Yeah, I mean, probably not a huge surprise to see Malga's starting to run away with the game. Someone obviously has been important for Qadsiah is Labda on that Sojourn, kind of bails them out there with a really nice 150 sort of point overclock to deal with KSA. Burn that Malga down quickly is the name of the game, because he's obviously has a lot of sustain over time. First damage hard to find with his cop though. There's landed, brought down by Yubi early. A bit awkward in the positioning for Qadsiah here, and Checkmate wasn't able to be a factor.
I think so. Twisted Minds, obviously, like the sim can ramp over time. I think for Qadsiah though, the sim has to be a little bit of a target because she is so squishy, right? Like sim is not able, kind of like wants to play in a brawler type of style, but doesn't have the health to really play in that type of style. Where it feels like if you're Qadsiah, if you can get rid of that sim, then you have just like a massive advantage, right?
I mean, then that's what Labda really is looking for Yubi in a lot of these early fights, and you've got to play a really particular style. I know a lot of teams just wouldn't dare to try doing it here. I mean, this is the problem. Checkmate is pretty scary to deal with. He's already found 2 backliners, by the way. Caught some funny Astro falling by his cyborg hand, and yeah, it's a pretty comfortable cleanup. But often Labda's just like saying, hey, if I can just get a headshot on this sim, chunk them really low, it's so easy for Checkmate to convert that.
Pretty rare as well, right? Because like typically with this point, whoever gets it first, we see them actually have a pretty long, substantial hold because it's so easy to contest, but the fights happen so fast. And now Qadsiah actually pushed Twisted Minds all the way basically back to their own choke, where they only get 21% off this. Like that isn't really much at all here. It'll be a sim barrier thrown in. It's gonna be a blade here for Checkmate. No cage fight though to group players up, and nice peel here.
Use the tree.
Trying to keep the supports alive. Use the tree.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I think that like it's also harder to like drag the fights out when you have a death ball comp, right? Everyone's grouped up, and you don't have people like dipping a toe on the point. Traces as well. That obviously makes a big difference when it comes to that stall. So I can't see it lose Checkmate there. They probably feel fine about that. They can, get off the point a little bit, or just like soft contest it as they are right now with the Brig, because Calyx, if he gets pushed, he has a rally just to throw straight away, and this is simple. So Twisted Minds get dragged, drawn out into the town square, have their ideas exposed, and also their brain matter apparently is simple. Ate that headshot instantly.
Dude, and Qadsiah, I mean, they're in a perfect spot here, dude, right? I mean, you're going to have both support ultimates online, cage fights as well, but still favors the team in control of the point here. Labda as well.
Okay,
picking up that first kill is, you tell me what's going on. What did Felix say? All right, do the stuff.
Do the yelling thing. 2 rallies, 2 orbital rays, 2 cage fights is all you need to know about that fight. So both teams with like the same 3 ultimates to work with, but Qadsiah already has such a big advantage, and KSA was really low as that fight began.
And now just the D.Va to try and get back to the point, right? You're going to get a TP on through. Quartz just trying to touch there on Tracer. Just gets deleted by the Brig. Is the last 2 rounds not been pretty for TM. That's going to be Qadsiah taking the first map.
So a lot to take away from this. I think the first impression I get is that these 2 teams have relatively similar styles. I think the classic flair of UB as a Symmetra player is probably always going to be present, especially on these control maps. Samoa is like a map where I've seen him do some pretty egregious things, but they both want to brawl, they want to play strong front lines, and they want to pit Labda up against Quartz as often as possible, which is kind of crazy to see this high-flying matchup where those 2 used to be on the same team. Labda never touched the hit scan at all. He's been able to adapt, move over to that role, and look fantastic here. So great stuff for Qadsiah, but I think the closest of the game kind of mirrors the weight of predictions from our fans at home here.
Is this even the style of play that most people will kind of come to the conclusion of, right? I mean, this feels very stage 1, where at least in our first series, right, of the day here in EMEA, we saw a lot of like dive, a lot of different types of styles, where this is going back to kind of a lot of what we saw, right, with the Maga versus Ramatra, maybe some hazard in the mix as well.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's KSA versus Ziad as well.
Yeah.
Like, which one of those 2 would you say is an accomplished like Winston player, for example, or not even accomplished, but
D.Va, but
sure. So I can see Ziad and KSA feel like they have similar pools. TVNT is the option for Twisted Minds to bring in. I saw TVNT played a lot during a time where like Orisa was quite ubiquitous in this region, but It could simply just be like a stylistic approach based on what's available to this team. But remember what Christopher said in that previous interview. He says that we actually feel like that amongst European teams, we can kind of do things that no one else can do. And that might be because, like, think of the other tank players in this region, like Mag, KSA, Ziad, Vistola. Who are the Winston players?
Not many, right? Like you would, I mean, and I think to, Christopher's probably point and probably realization, it's like, that if you're looking at like import slots for EU, right? Like you're looking at like tanks, right? Like somebody who can play all the different types of style of tanks. Like if you can import a player of that, like, Heesung, you see the difference it makes for the ultimates and how they look, being able to have a Winston kind of, option, and same with Ball. It just kind of changes the dynamics of your team.
It's why I think the VP picked up Icenom, to give them like a second tank option. But there are not a lot of teams I think that are going to be like naturally that want to play Winston. You can see that lack of Winston in the hero pool was heavily exposed. I mean, Tread was an option, right? We saw Tread for our Qadsiah there in Hangzhou, but again, it wasn't enough.
But I guess it also raises the question of like, what is the goal of some of these EMEA teams? Like, are they fine just making it out of EMEA? Because it's clear that like their play style doesn't really translate that well to like international play, right? So it's like, okay, fine, in EMEA we can get through EMEA playing like this, right, just against other teams who play like it, and we'll qualify for the events. But once you get there, what do you do, right? It feels like great, you made it, but like you're not really making any progress on the international level.
I still think there are a number of Winston players as well. Like amongst, remember, because Tread went to Pebs, right? So they have that option. Also, Skytor is a Winston player on that quick esports roster that comes in. I don't know like how much we're gonna see from him, but there are like 4 Winston, sort of like known Winston players amongst what we have here. So New Junk City is going to be the selection here, not Suravasa. Again, this is the kind of map that lends itself to more of those brawl style comps. So we just happen to find ourselves, I think, in a matchup where both teams have a pretty similar inclination. I don't know if it's going to be a definitive style. We're going to see more dive play in EMEA this year, but I don't know if it's going to be nearly as much as what we see in other regions.
Would TM ban Maga if they want to play like a Ramatra type of brawl, right?
Yeah, you certainly can. Like I said, I don't think that there's any way that you... Because of the overlap between hero pools between these two teams, like I don't think a tank ban is going to, while it might benefit Twisted Minds, I don't know if it's going to hurt Qadsiah necessarily.
Right.
Hearing from Junkbuck, he felt like Ziad was the player that they wanted to like invest in going forward. So that obviously means that like they're pretty confident with the level of flexibility there. But in Junk City, right? We see a ton of Soj on this map. Obviously, no Freya from that first map. She can be an option, of course, but lacks the lateral mobility that Sojourn has, right?
It's a Quartz player for like a second, right? Just to get back to the point. But yeah, potentially like some Freya options. I would love to see Quartz play the Freya. It seems like a hero that would definitely fit his style of play. So we'll get an idea what each team decides to ban. I think for Twisted Minds, like if they want to play like more of a Ramatra brawl, I think you can definitely get rid of the Maga. I think, but maybe you save that for a little bit later, right? Also curious, like we have some maps like Gibraltar that are in the pool, right? Do we see either of these teams try and throw like a huge curveball? And you can play Diva. You don't necessarily have to play the Winston on Gibraltar, right? So you could pick a Gibraltar, ban a tank in like a first pick kind of protect angle, right?
It seems interesting because they it feels like their go-to comps are more defensive or more about sustained fighting, but they also have 2 of the most deadly hit scan players in EMEA as well on their team. So that is always going to add a level of volatility to these games, which is why like going back a little bit to Oasis, picking Symmetra is a big risk. Obviously, UB's a specialist. That's a role where like we know that we've seen them get a ton of value from before. It's just being able to come from some unexpected angles, but it's really vulnerable to not only Genji but also of course that Sojourn pressure. But you're right, both these teams feel like they're very stage 1 pilled in their comp.
I mean NA and Asia, right? They're playing with all these new toys and everything else, and then EMEA is just like, no, we're good. We're just gonna take things back to the Stone Ages here and just play, on the ground.
Let's not forget the hazard ban in map 1, right?
Well, so maybe that's a thing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe either of these teams wants to do that because, like I mentioned, Nightmare was using hazard against Maga comps, right? During their stage 1 run. to really good success, right? So maybe that's something that some teams like worked on would like to try and replicate. So maybe the hazard ban, for TM there in that first map is more impactful than we had thought.
Yeah, so that's one thing to keep in mind, what we might expect to see. Matt suggested like a Malga ban. Obviously, you won't be able to get rid of Hazard a second consecutive time. So Venture, very specific ban here against Qadsiah. The checkmate Venture, I think, might be something that they're sort of looking at. Actually, they probably play Tracer Venture comp, so it might even be a checkmate pick here. But Lucio banned out in response.
And we do see a ton of Venture on first point here on New Junk City. They're really good at obviously using the burrow, getting in, being able to pop out in combination with like a Maga stomp and putting down some serious damage. The Lucio being gone, quite interesting. That'll get some Juno into the mix here as we go into New Junk City.
Yeah, I think that's, we probably feel like there's plenty of room to play like Genji here, or you can even think about some of these more wider open areas after the first point. There's sometimes great incentive to switch off, try and work that Pharah in. We know that's obviously always something that sits in the back pocket of Lapta, for example. You can definitely still try and work the sim into your comps. I think that like being able to TP on this map, especially some of the points like ducts, for example, that feature like a pretty oppressive high ground advantage, but you might be incentivized to try and take control of those spaces in a pinch. The bench ban feels very targeted here at Qadsiah.
Yep.
See what the result is.
Yeah, it'll be okay. So Kellex is actually Kellex here. So making some huge moves here. First game he wanted to play under.
The artist formerly known as Talon is Tops. Okay.
Yeah, he just wanted to make sure he was playing pretty well until he actually revealed his name. But we were too clued in. We knew.
Oh yes, obviously with no substitution between maps, that is who it was. So Malgamira. Okay, keep running it, folks. No dramas. Qadsiah clearly feel confident enough that they can hang in this mirror pretty happily. It will be like Genji Sojourn for Qadsiah, and Twisted Minds again. They want to play this sim style. So again, this we have with the concentric circles with like, this is a relatively tight trope all around the point. So you can set up those turrets, have some impact. Checkmate already have forced a bit of a deflect now as both those speed rings are deployed. It's time to dive though, and KSA kind of blink first there and turning back away from this. Checkmate's looking to get some free damage as he turned his back on Ziad and got punished for it.
Well, KSA just takes a ton of damage in the poke, right? Like, if Twisted Minds doesn't necessarily, like, play quite aggressive and get UB in, he's not really providing a ton of damage output, right? With the right clicks at long range with the sim. So, it's KSA who takes a ton of damage, kind of forced to use some of the cooldowns, so, runs away with his stomp. And that pretty much is just, like, go time for Qadsiah. They're all pretty healthy. You slide in, you stomp in, you get a Genji dash on in, and it's a pretty easy first fight.
Sim obviously now getting a pretty big health pool overall these days at 275. It still can be tricky to get in. She's so susceptible to like that poke damage, but big TP, eyes in the direction of Labda, but obviously the Sojourn has the mobility at least to back up a little bit. Meanwhile, Qadsiah is still grouping up and dealing with the front line. So Labda escapes, can't be assassinated, in comes Checkmate. The follow-up with the stomp is perfect. That's maybe one reason why Twisted Minds didn't want to allow them to adventure into the mix.
But that's how that's where you see that the sim is just so vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
You're able to just collapse right onto the sim. There's nothing that the sim can do in terms of like mobility or survivability to get away, as this should be Qadsiah pretty safely taking this first point. You didn't really need to invest much of anything into it. Also for Qadsiah, right, you ban that Lucio, it takes it away from Funny Astro, but I think with this type of composition, you would have had him on the brig anyway. And Funny Astro, when Lucio's not in, the brig is definitely like, I would say, is kind of a other go-to hero, so to speak. I don't think it's hugely impactful.
No, they probably would have wanted Lucio if they could get it. I still feel with the Lucio speed can be huge. Sound barrier obviously very helpful. Quartz though, trades. Overclock accounts for Ziad here. That's the blade. Yubi gets taken down eventually, trying to TP. And again, we don't love the sim pick. It's not, so far, it's not bearing much fruit. And Checkmate gets to do his things. Run rush shot through that back line. Qadsiah, convincing fight win to start the second flashpoint.
So look, I think the Sim can be effective. I think it's just a lot easier to stop, right, than the Genji, right? The Genji kind of like, poke a little bit more at range. It's got a great combination, right, with the cage fight plus blade. If you wanted to use that, you can kind of use the blade to, get out support ultimate on the other side. So Quartz will end up playing the Freya. That'll be the big change here for TM.
Okay, Simple down first. There's nothing really to answer Checkmate. Funny Astro has a rally in play, but Checkmate was able to get in and get out scot-free. Quartz, well, over towards the Freya, but cage fight made it a little bit hard for Twisted Minds to deal with that. However, decent position in this fight now. Funny Astro being low, something that Qadsiah can't really take advantage of. Twisted Minds get back in 54% for Qadsiah.
And we talked about it in the past where the Sim getting stuck inside the opponent's cage fight necessarily isn't the worst thing, right? It just kind of keeps everybody in that close quarter range, or if you're able to keep the Sim alive, then you can actually almost like use their cage fight against them in a certain way. But with all the support ults being thrown in there, this is a free blade for Checkmate, right? You expect him to get value out of this blade. He's been doing it every single time throughout the series thus far.
It's go time. Quartz hovering, Simple flattened instantly. No shield bash to fear, but a whip shot does make it awkward for Checkmate. Knocked up into the sky. And now there's a potential here with a flip and some stall on Funny Astro. He makes the right choice, goes to point, makes sure that he doesn't get staggered out at all. One fight put Twisted Minds in the lead here, but Qadsiah able to fire back and likely have overclock and orbit array for the next engagement.
And even though the blade only gets one there, Mitch, it just separates everybody on Twisted Minds. You see players everywhere, right? You kill Simple, Funny Astros on like the other side of the point, not able to heal KSA, and then for there, right, for Qadsiah, you don't have to separate, right? Checkmate goes around, does his thing, separates the team on the other side just by the fact that he's using that blade, and then just push on through.
Okay, there's a bowler shot being thrown down. It doesn't look like it bothers Qadsiah whatsoever. Waldo, Labda obviously has to work with this. Trying to bring it down. Press the people on the other side of it now. Zia with a nice little stop that comes in. Funny Astro taken down as a result. Labda's out of the game here. UB finally got something done as the Sim, but now endangered species. Great counter stop there from KSA. Yes, he couldn't recover from that at all. There is a rally in play right now from Kellex, which means that Checkmate can play with a bit more reckless abandon. Dash straight through. KSA is, of course, the primary target, and the Freya can be cleaned up after the fact. That's a second flashpoint for Qadsiah.
Is there anything you think that Twisted Minds can adjust here, right?
Switch off the Sim.
Like they're just, yeah, but it seems like they're just hard locked on it, right? Like, I don't necessarily think, so what UB, historically would probably play is like a Tracer, right? But Tracer doesn't really work with this, right? You wouldn't see like Tracer into Amaga. It's a character that we don't really see that often. Take a look at Checkmate sitting at 20-1 at the moment, just absolutely farming here on the Genji.
It's a tough, the way these two teams match up and what they're comfortable with, I just don't think favors Twisted Minds. UB dies first there. Whether it's Checkmate going in, following up on just incidental poke damage, of which there is a lot in these Malka comps, or Labda just like finding a headshot and blowing her up. There's so many things. I think you have to play perfectly as the Sim in this situation to sort of find success. And you can't do that all the time. It's just much to ask for. Cage fight dealt with. Quartz is pretty floaty on that Freya. It's easy for Checkmate to head upstairs and take liberties.
I was gonna say, that's pretty bad for TM, right? You end up using your cage fight plus rally, and then they just cage fight and blade in response. And that's all Qadsiah needs to control the point. They're already up 2-0. They're gonna get above probably 50% before the next fight kicks off. And they're gonna end up with both support ults. I mean, they are in such a commanding position in this game. It's crazy.
I also think that it's hard to burst the cage fight down with Twisted Minds comp. Sojourn with the 150 rail perk is really, she can actually blow that cage fight up really quickly before your team sort of gets punished for it. So that's an option. Should be a decent bowler shot here. Anyone caught? Yeah, it's gonna get blown up there. Nice damage in from Quartz. Qadsiah concede the point because they build two support ultimates to try and win the map here. I'd be surprised if Landon dared make use of that orbital ray.
He does. I mean, he does. They even it up. Yeah, they even it up at 3 players apiece, and they have the rally here. So it was that double support like I was talking about. And now you have nobody really here to help KSA. He just gets pushed back all the way to spawn. So even with being down, a few players, right? You even things up in that 3-on-3 scenario. There's no supports on the other side. You have Ray and the rally. You also know that they don't have it on the other side, so you feel pretty free to throw it in there.
You'd be trying to set up a defensive zone in here, but it's going to be taken down. KSA had to stall and couldn't put himself where he needed to be. He also couldn't give that a cardiac overdrive to any teammates because he was solo touching to keep overtime going. Disastrous way for this fight to start for Twisted Minds, and it's kind of been the story of the map for them thus far. Landon will top up Kellex, make sure he remains in the fray. And it's basically cooked. Funny Astro here on the Kiriko to try and keep things going, but there's too much healing being doled out. A convincing take of New Junk City for Qadsiah.
I mean, TM should just get rid of the Maga. I mean, at this point, right, just try and play that Ramatra in the head-to-head, because trying to play the, Maga with the Sim against the Genji style does just not seem to be working out. And then when the option is to kind of have the Sojourn drop to a Freya, like you mentioned, there's not enough damage to like break through the cage fight. Like, sure, you might have some like more long range pick potential, like some more consistent damage, maybe there, some like more consistent burst, but you're not close, right?
Some of the logic might be that Sim is the best recipient of cardiac overdrive, because when she's charged up, she has like a DPS that is not challengeable. So in like a cage fight, you can just farm the cage just to get like charged up. But
think about the scenario you're describing. It is like such a perfect niche scenario.
Yeah, not super niche, but niche enough to make it like you're not accounting for a bunch of other like
niche enough that you wouldn't build your comp around it.
No,
right?
It's just like summer. I think you're building your comp around it because UB wants to play the sim right. They feel like that kind of gives them an edge, and that's why I'm kind of concerned, because I think during this map we get a good look at the styles that both these teams really want to play. Okay, maybe outside the Lucio. Lucio's not here, but it doesn't really seem to make a big difference. Both like Funny Astro and Kellex are like really accomplished Lucio players, so that's kind of a moot point as far as I'm concerned. So you might be correct in saying that System Minds need to ban Malga here. That's the only thing I can look at the comp of Qadsiah and go, this is something that they can target and try and gain an asymmetrical advantage from. Outside of that, I think they can't really target DPS because obviously like there's an analog for Sojourn now in terms of Freya. You can't target the backline because you've got like very storied, very flexible players there. You've already tried to do that as well by
you could ban Genji. If you wanted to continue to Maga mirror, but maybe take the difference out, like get rid of the Genji, right? And then what does Checkmate decide to play, right? That could be a little bit of a toss-up. If you didn't have Genji in the mix, like he probably plays like what? Like Checkmate could play a Pharah. We've seen some teams like go to like Mei in the past, right? You wouldn't see Tracer come into play, right? It's probably more like a Pharah type of look, I would assume.
I mean, the map pool is pretty wide open from here. The thing is that we have some more of those dive-friendly maps than we did in the previous stage, and like neither of these teams want to go there. So Kings Row feels like a pretty acceptable hybrid map. I think like a Midtown is also in there. You could argue that that's the hybrid map that you could play the brawl style here, but this seems suitable.
Yeah, and here you can actually see some diva play potentially, right? Trying to play for some more of that high ground. Maga becomes a little bit more effective as the map goes on, but there is still some high ground here that you absolutely need to contest. This also opens things up for Quartz to maybe play some like Ashe, some like long range capabilities, right? Maybe even just bring the Freya in from the start. So potentially gives TM some more options. I'm curious on where they go with the ban though. I think this will be quite fascinating.
I also think that if we get a Malga ban or like the tank pool gets targeted at all, Diva kind of can change the value proposition of playing like an Ashe, for example, or even a Freya to some degree. Obviously, she's got really good mobility, but not again, sometimes needs to be a little bit closer than Sojourn, for example, to have great effect. Where Sojourn can safely poke down.
It does feel like though, with what TM wants to play, it's pretty hard to like win the ban stage, right? I think another argument for TM banning the Genji would also be that it protects Qadsiah from getting rid of the sim, right? Because then what, you would force them into playing like Tracer or something along those lines, right? Or UB on Pharah potentially. Like,
I do think that UB can play Pharah. Obviously, we know Labda can. This is like not a hostile Tracer map as well. I think that under like some of these conditions and some of these comps,
that's true.
It can be really ugly. Like Tracer getting caught in a cage fight is about as bad as it gets, right? It's not a situation you want to sort of find yourself in. But taking stock of things, after it being somewhat competitive at times on Oasis, and that first round at least, Qadsiah have looked to be like head and shoulders the better team. I think like New Junk City was really unconvincing. So they do, as you kind of suggest, Matt, they want to target this Genji pick from Checkmate. The one big point of difference between these two squads.
Yeah, this also allows them to protect the sim, so it'll actually be a Ramatra ban here from Qadsiah, so that's actually quite smart, right? Because now it forces them to play that Maga, right? If they want to kind of continue to play that style, where we saw TM a little bit earlier opt to go with the Ramatra.
So this is okay. I did a very proportional response here. So I think Qadsiah, if they have to lose the Genji, I kind of don't blame them in wanting to still try and set up like a potential Malga situation. But like you mentioned, D.Va is really reasonable here, especially for defenders. I think you have that flexibility. You just have less ability to commit, whereas Malga obviously is the epitome of a tank that wants to commit, that wants to draw people in. So.
Well, I think you would be more confident here if you're Qadsiah, right? Because you're forcing them onto the Malga mirror, right? You still have your backline intact. You still have your Sojourn in the mix. And then it's just a player in Checkmate who's extremely flexible, being able to move around to something else. Yeah, I think you're in a really powerful spot.
Can you play? Do you feel like you can actually like bring the Mei in here? Is that an option?
We saw it in stage 1, right? We saw some teams play some Mei. It's still like super situational. I think you have to have like a really strong Mei player, which Checkmate's pretty
and better
good.
against Ramatra as well. Sorry to cut you off, but like obviously she's the best at shutting down that annihilation.
Yep, and then obviously Yuri, a pretty good Mei as well, could be quite interesting. But I think if you are Twisted Minds, you are all in on this sim at this point.
Okay. Checkmate also wants to pick this up. So I'm liking this a lot. Obviously, sim into the D.Va, can circumvent defense matrix for the most part, right? So KSA has to be aware of that. But again, I do like it gives Twisted Minds the ability to disrupt that backline a little bit and create a lot of space for what might be an Iari here from Simple.
Oh, that would be a bit of a curveball on the offensive side of things, right? Well,
so much poke.
Yeah, well, we'll see if that's what they opt to go with. Obviously, Violari can put down some serious damage at range, right? We just don't really see it. We rarely see it on offense, right? We see a lot of teams run it on like defense when we do see it in play. So this is an interesting setup.
It's making a comeback on Circuit Royal in Korea. I think we actually saw that. I think like the game that Jaehong's team was in against Crazy Raccoon. Okay, well. Quartz brought down there pretty early on. Now, Qadsiah trying to stay safe. Ziad also playing his life very well, but Checkmate, the only casualty here. Someone, of course, who could return to the fray relatively quickly, so nothing you're writing home about here for Qadsiah. Getting KSA out alive is very good, though, for that support ult charge.
It just seems like you're like doubling down more on damage here instead of survivability, I guess, if you're Twisted Minds, right? Because you end up losing the Brig, where the Brig is so good in terms of like the stun, the repair packs, being able to like brawl out with that Maga.
What are they doing here? What are they doing here? That is wild to me. Simple loses that healing turret, and that's just a big overextension there for Qadsiah defensively. Obviously, Lab to try and stay alive here. KSA is looking terrifying. He knows his goose is cooked, so maybe try and get an elimination if he can on the way out. It's not to be a bizarre little fight that was.
Yeah, maybe a little too far there for Qadsiah, as now Twisted Minds able to get the point off this. Checkmate is still stuck behind enemy lines. He's still in the spawn of Qadsiah, Twisted Minds. So Checkmate will fall. So that is going to be Twisted Minds taking first point. Now they'll start to get the payload moving. I'm still I would still say like jury's out for the comp, right? In terms of how it played. I think Qadsiah just they got off to a great start. It's just got a little bit too crazy there towards the end.
They're definitely threatening a snowball now, though. Twisted Minds. Like a pretty ballsy fight. Remember that like KSA got out alive after being like 5 HP, so Simple and Funny Astro, Sword Ultimates are online. Oh, the combo! Oh, that's so dirty! Captive Sun meets Bowler Shot is absolute filth, man. Wow, Qadsiah never stood a chance.
Oh, there's no possibilities of being able to heal through that, right? I mean, the bolo shot comes out, does an explosion. Captive Sun as well, obviously starts taking with the damage. No way, even with the support ults, like with Landon and Kellex having an orbital ray and rally, you're going to be able to heal through that. So really sick combination there from Twisted Minds. You now have a cage fight, right? That they're actually going to have KSA drop right around this corner. They want to protect them from potentially even trying to touch the point.
Okay, so trying to set a far forward zone here. Lapta little dangerous there. Able to be kept alive though by Landon. Now Qadsiah though, they do have a distinct ult advantage here. No flashy combos like we saw from Twisted Minds necessarily, but good old honest Overwatch here should give them a bit of an edge in this fight. Landon's able to throw that orbital ray down here. They want to get aggressive, want to come forward. Qadsiah with another bowler shot deployed. Damn, Twisted Minds built that pretty quickly. And I think it's going to be tough. KSA gets just topped up in that front line. And here's that symbol being thrown down, but Checkmate's under extreme duress. Chased down. Nobody can really kill KSA until right about now. And Ziad has an opportunity to flex his muscles a little bit more, but there's no healing for him either. I like this Twisted Minds look a lot better.
Yeah, it seems like now that you've got the Genji out, right, and forced them off onto a sim to like mirror, it seems like you have a little bit of advantage. I also think that Simple coming in, playing this Illari is definitely been a bit of a change of pace, right? The Illari plus the Freya. So we'll see that second checkpoint here now in favor of Twisted Minds. A lot of time in the time bank here, Mitch. This is going to be a Captive Sun really early.
Yeah, nice connection there. Simple has to do a lot of work themselves there. Labdor ends up falling to Quartz at long range. The Twisted Minds really exploiting Qadsiah here. They definitely feel comfortable still involving that sim, and I think that Liari is a huge point of difference that is giving TM a nice little edge. I mean, obviously Simple opts not to combo the Captive Sun there with Quartz. Oh, it's going to get eaten anyway. That bowler shot goes away.
But still, like, it gave them so much space, right? The Captive Sun and then pushing up, being able to get those kills, right? Even if the bubble shot doesn't get anything there. Look at this, they're already around, you know, that first corner, right? It's very difficult to move around at times. Now, moving into this part of the map, Ziad goes to the Diva, right? Because you want to try and control some of that high ground.
Okay, well, wall comes out. This is nice. Look at KSA charging into the backline under the cover of that sim architecture. Ziad gets back onto the safe side of the wall, but is very, very low and can't compete in the fight. What a stop there for KSA. He knows there's going to be a group up there between Ziad and Landon and punishes it heavily. Now, cage fight thrown down for extra value. Calyx Lucio only able to stall for a short time as Checkmate will be fed to the wood chipper. I'd say 3 minutes and 14 seconds, 15 seconds. Pretty convincing, wouldn't you?
Oh, I mean, that is sick there from Twisted Minds. Are you surprised that Qadsiah just sort of started to run the sim? Like, I'm a little surprised that that's the direction they went because they were having so much success in stopping the sim on the other side, right? You know, maybe they feel like that their next best look is, you know, running that sim after the Genji, but with how effective they were against sim, I'm surprised they decided to just roll right into it.
Tough round for Checkmate. You can see the damage output from Quartz here is pretty impeccable. Yubi not having to do too much, but just to be consistent there. I'm a little surprised. Against like a Sim Iari, there might be some other options here, like in terms of other flankers you can try and work towards. There's so much poke though from this Twisted Minds composition, and I think that, you know, Qadsiah really don't have a way of mitigating that. The Diva switch comes in really late in the day for them, after they've already been sort of farmed. They got snowballed really hard through the second phase, and then Qadsiah lose a fight they're supposed to win, realistically. When they have both support ultimates in cage fight there in the second phase, they end up getting owned by Yubi's wall. It makes it really hard for them to actually like exercise their win condition.
They do lose a little bit of poke here on the defensive side of things, right? Not running the Illari, right? Simple will end up picking up the Kiri here, but I'm curious for Qadsiah, right? Do you just completely drop this Maga? Like, are you gonna just play this Diva on offense? Gives them a little bit more high ground control. They're gonna be able to like poke a bit more, right? You know, just try and like, you know, dwindle over time, you know, take out TM. We'll see if it pays off though. Ooh, you see Simple has the TP straight out of there.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a great job taking this space. That obviously is something the sim offers you. Now, I get the Malka comp does not want to be stood out in the open. So they back away. We flip the map essentially and can start to at least tease a cap. You're looking for the charge here from the Malga. KSA wants to get as close as he can before initiating that charge, so it's just, it's not telegraphed at all if possible, but already a free tick here for Qadsiah.
Yeah, they've kind of like flipped the map. It's made it very bizarre here for TM. Have to try and come back in, but I also think that as you're seeing the fight go in the way of Twisted Minds, once they kind of force that fight on the low ground, that's the fight that they do want, right? So although it's Qadsiah, you know, rotating up to the high ground, forcing them down low, once Qadsiah has to come down and actually kind of try and take the objective, that's where Twisted Minds can fight on even footing, right? They don't want to fight Twisted Minds low to high ground. They want to fight an even turf.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, though, the footing's not even because in a pitched battle, this Malga comp is always going to outlast the Diva one. Like, Ziad does not want to actually, you know, plant his feet and just hold M1 in these situations. So as long as KSA can set the terms of engagement that Qadsiah have to face them like head on, he's always going to win. That's why we're seeing this contortionism from Qadsiah to get into a good position, then drop down, and then to rotate your diva onto the point, rotate Calyx. They're trying to apply some degree of pressure. But when it comes to actually winning the fight, they need to rely on like a drawn-out engagement where they can poke that Malga down. That's dirty. Quartz flies overhead. Bowler shot committed. Labda down to a torpedo. And then Quartz immediately gets back to safety.
And it just does not seem like Twisted Minds is giving them anything to go after, right? You're seeing the speed come in there from Calyx. You're also seeing them kind of use those TPs, just trying to catch anybody out. They're not able to find any targets. They're just kind of like left circling the map constantly. As this has been a really good defense here from Twisted Minds.
They feel really uncomfortable, Qadsiah.
Yeah.
Nightbuck said actually, in an interview with Commander X, he's like, he feels like his team is actually really easy to ban out if you know what to target. I wonder if he was alluding to the checkmate Genji to some degree. It's definitely been a little bit tough. Sound barrier here used by Calyx. Quartz is out of the game. Ziad is able to find a dive target finally. Now they've got to play on the point inside the enemy Kitsune Rush, so self-destruct here will be, shoved through the wall. No connection there. KSA a little low. Ziad gonna be knocked out of mech again with an orbital ray in play. Twisted Minds have everything they could ask for from this ground fight.
Oh, I mean, you're also going to have Qadsiah use their sim wall here towards the end. Labda end up using the overclock. They feel like they need this fight. It's going to be a cage fight as well here from KSA. You're going to get Simple back into the mix, just trying to keep him alive. He will end up falling, and this should be Qadsiah. You're going to get that second checkpoint, then you're going to get the objective.
Hard fought. Make no mistake. Qadsiah had to pull out all the stops to get going on this map, but still with a minute in time bank gives them a pretty respectable bit of leeway heading into the second phase. Landed also getting close to another Kitsune Rush. The previous one got awkwardly used on the high ground in an attempt to respond to Quartz hovering over there with a bowler shot. It didn't really make the difference for them there.
Do you feel like this comp though for Qadsiah gets better or worse here in this part of the map? I feel like the strength of it is in the first and the last phase.
Look, I think the sim can play like these corners a bit better, like set up some TPs, because Twisted Minds are going to want to push into them. When they lose the choke like this though, I think that's a pretty scary situation. The map gets flipped again, by the way, so TM obviously are defending. Now, I love how they're just setting the rules of engagement so that Qadsiah have to engage, but the Kitsune Rush is going to help the attackers to that effect quite substantially. They only lose Simple, though, and they're able to disengage from that, so pretty efficient. KSA, okay, maybe just gets caught out as well. They sort of avoided Snowball in this phase of the map tier.
Yeah, we're just trading sides of the map with the sim TPs, right? So TPing to the other side for both teams, and then we're TPing all the way back. Is KSA now will match the Diva, so they feel like potentially this is giving them some trouble. So we're off of Maga for both sides, and now into a Diva head-to-head. So Labda has not shown us a Freya here yet today. Quartz has definitely used it to really good effect in combination with Simple Solari on the offensive side, but then here now.
Of course, I mean, the mobility is pretty insane. Great vertical mobility. Just be able to hover for a period of time is good. So Sound Barrier here, you've got to get good value out of it. And again, it's a fight where Ziad gets a first pick. It's Yubi again, the theoretically squishiest part. But of course, being able to find Labda there with that latent explosion is pretty huge. And Checkmate definitely isn't favored in a pitched battle against a Freya. He's able to TP back to the high ground. Qadsiah, again, make it topsy-turvy land here. Map gets flipped, but the checkpoint, crucially, is about to be picked up. Self-destruct popped, avoided though for the most part. Remech damage rather going on to KSA, but the damage is there for Twisted Minds. No real reason to give this up here. TM should be able to hold.
Yeah, if you're TM, with the amount of time that you have in the bank, you just fight this, like always, right? There's no reason not to fight it and, invest some of these ultimates and then, get yourself in this type of situation, right? Where now Qadsiah below a minute on the clock is going to have to get this second checkpoint and put themselves in a pretty horrible position for the end of the game. I don't know if you caught it as well. Quartz tried to actually predict players going through the TP with the bola shot. Just was a hair too early.
I respect, though, the thinking that goes into that. Overclock available here for Labda in a moment. This is a tough one for Twisted Minds to hold on. KSA almost had a self-destruct for a potential remake, but the Kitsune Rush again seems to be the key for Qadsiah. Throw it down in this fight and they will be able to push through. Still, it's a slim time bank at best.
Yeah, Symbol ended up using his in the previous fight just to secure a fight win for Twisted Minds. So you got a pretty nice advantage here for Qadsiah coming on in. But like we talked about with the time bank of Twisted Minds, totally worth it, right? No chance Qadsiah, you know, even mathematically had a chance to, you know, match the time bank or better it, right? So you're going to give yourself at worst a huge advantage in the OT for TM.
Pretty busy in that front line. Elsewhere, though, Lab, they're trying to throw down with Quartz, who stays out of line of sight for the time being. Just wants to play his life. KSA gets back into the mech, though, despite big damage coming in from Checkmate. He's charged up and ready to go. Now there's a wall to dance. See that? Remech. Oh, got simple as well. That's a huge value elimination. Doesn't get back in the mech. KSA is able to deal with him, but that's enough for Qadsiah. Such a free kill there with the self-destruct should get them on the road even further, but we're now heading into the 1 minute warning.
Honestly, I think once they've gone to the Diva, this is where I think Qadsiah has looked a bit better here. Is Lab that will move over and play Mei here for the last part of the map. So giving a lot of stability, sturdiness to the team. We're going to see KSA ending up going with a Zarya. Zarya is so good, especially into the Diva matchup.
KSA, though, time to really build up and get going in this fight. That's the question. Labda on the Mei here. And it's a bit of a bloodbath. Twisted Mind attempts to slow things down. They fold the Zarya into their copper. That Kitsune Rush does get off. Simple, unfortunately, brought down very quickly. About 40 seconds in the time bank here for Qadsiah. That'll get a bit of a bump to 1 minute. Twisted Minds do have a big time bank lead, but I think you're right. I think it was much more uncomfortable for Qadsiah to play Diva into Malga.
And there's no way, I think, that they can throw this, right? I mean, 333 in the time bank. I think you probably, for Twisted Minds, I would come out and play Malga off the rip, right? I think you did a good job holding with the Malga. I would play the Malga because it's also better in the second point of the map, right? I don't think there's a reason to change off of that. So that's what I would do here. I'm Twisted Minds off the rip because it seems like once you went to the Diva, that's where Qadsiah found some more success.
Good, their damage numbers here being put out. Ziad, of course, definitely having to be the frontliner up against KSA. A lot of sparks flying there, but Quartz has 17k over the course of this game on the Freya. So don't be fooled. I think the discussion has been that Freya is less oppressive than other, you know, new heroes as they come into the game, but she's able to find a great
We've said that before. and then we know how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, what are you saying, that you're expecting, you know, there to be a random buff for Freya coming up soon?
Either maybe a small buff or, you know, just, I think as people play with her more and use her more in different types of comps, right, they start to figure out like, hey, this character actually is extremely effective, right? Can be pretty powerful in the right hands.
That's certainly fair. Once players really start to get the, you know, wind in their sails on some of these picks, they can transform them. They look unrecognizable from their first outings. So will be the sim still here for Qadsiah, and they've made good use of that TP getting in. Course just gets bowled over. This is a good start for Qadsiah, but when the rubber truly hits the road and Twisted Minds actually have a chance to respond, they keep it pretty even. There's still the issue of this Malga that for Qadsiah has to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, Labda does find Yubi here late, so you're going to be able to maybe get back before he gets back into the action, but he's going to have that TP, so should be able to get back rather quickly. But it's going to allow Qadsiah to at least get their way onto the point, right? You're going to regroup a little bit here for TM.
There's the stomp. Ziad doesn't really bother about it too much there. Pretty tanky amidst the middle of this fight. Charge down on KSA. Oh, buddy, he got a big burst of healing, allowed him to deal with Landon, but trades himself out. Time is ticking now. One tick is all that Qadsiah have been able to amass so far. It's not enough on this attack side as Twisted Minds drag them one by one down.
No, and it was such a good decision, I think, from the Twisted Minds to play the Malga here off the rip. It was a lot harder for Qadsiah to end up breaking that Malga setup at the start, and then also would have given them a really nice chance in the second part of the map. Doesn't even need it though, and now with 3:33 on the clock, they are in a great position to get a map.
Yeah, look, and you can see this has been just a really good map pick, combined with the hero ban of Twisted Minds.
Yeah.
Obviously, they kind of save it for last, as they knew that would be their silver bullet against this Qadsiah team. The problem is that, well, you can't ban Genji again over the course of this series, and your takeaways from this map are, you know, definitely that you have an advantage in the sim matchup. I think they're about to get some really nice TPs down, and of course the Malga into Diva favors Twisted Minds.
Well, not only is the Genji a really good ban, obviously, to take it out of the hands of Checkmate, right? Like, you could have actually played like Malga with the Genji here if you're Qadsiah, and like Checkmate could have been the one who just kind of contested that high ground constantly, right? We see like the Genji time and time again being able to kind of contest high ground in lots of different maps, right? So they could have used that Genji to get up to that high ground, and it would have been very difficult to stop, even with that Mog in the mix. So a good ban on all different sides here from Twisted Minds.
Okay, well, 3 minutes 33. That is a very big time bank for a map like Kings Row. And for Qadsiah, one slip, one mistake will be a map loss. And then they'll at least have a chance to select their battlefield and get first ban. Let's get about it. TP's already set up. Labda wants to come forward now on this May. Very defensive slant on this Qadsiah composition, but it doesn't do much about the TPs that come in behind them. Hasty Ice Block. I think Ziad got blocked by the Ice Block and couldn't complete the charge. That is awkward as heck. Labda brought down, probably fuming after that little engagement with Ziad B, I'm sure. KSA causing problems on the point, but Quartz has been felled at least. Qadsiah have a fighting chance here, but not if you checkmate can't even peek out of the hotel. That's that, folks. Wash your hands of that little matchup. Maybe bleach your eyeballs if you are an Qadsiah fan and just move on with your life.
Yeah, he was actually going to use the stump. It looked like they actually go around the corner of the hotel, potentially. Get some of those players who are trying to run away for Twisted Minds. But, a little friendly fire with the ice block there. Traps him in. Do I think that's the difference between winning the game or, in that case, drawing it or not? No. I think Twisted Minds definitely had that one in firm control.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Qadsiah were throwing caution to the wind anyway by TPing forward and trying to use their May in a very aggressive position. And the moment that you're turning your back on your opponents and using Ice Block to heal up, you know you're in some trouble there. So fair is fair out there in Kings Row and out there in the battlefields of Overwatch 2. And a very, very inspired map selection and hero band there. A couple of these moments we can look over here as the game started with the Malga Mirror and a big overextension from Qadsiah. I feel like they really handed that first point over when honestly they were looking fine in that first fight.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think they were looking pretty good, and then they just kind of it ended up just kind of all collapsing. The sound barrier here from Kellex kind of pushing on through the choke there. This is now when we finally see TM get on their side of the things. Where look, I think though now with firm control for Qadsiah, right, being able to pick the map in the ban, I think you can definitely see them just how we saw them target TM target the Genji, right. And then Qadsiah get rid of the Ramatra. I think they have such an advantage here to be able to target something, right? You can get rid of potentially the Maga still in the mix, right? You can get rid of the Freya if you want to force Quartz not to play that hero, right? A lot of different options for Qadsiah, and they just need that one more map.
So thinking of the map, we've already seen Hybrid, we've seen Flashpoint. So it's going to leave us with what? Escort map here for our fourth. Obviously, forget about Gibraltar. I think it's pretty unlikely that we see it. So
I think Gibraltar would be completely out.
Let's on a theory craft here. We're heading to a quick break. When we come back, map 4 of the series between Qadsiah and Twisted Minds. The former still in position to take it all with a win in our escort map. First outing here in Stage 2 for Qadsiah and Twisted Minds. And after a couple of convincing Qadsiah map wins, a bit of a roadblock. King's Row picked by Twisted Minds and a Genji band to pair with it. And it stops Qadsiah in their tracks, Matt.
Yes, we will have Qadsiah be the map pick here for Qadsiah. So this is a map that historically, like, we've also seen like a lot of very difficulties, I would say, playing things like a Mauga here at the start. So it'll actually be the Sim ban here for Qadsiah. And then for TM, we're actually going to see a Mauga ban, which is quite interesting. It would have struck me that TM would have been the team that potentially would have wanted to keep the Mauga in.
Okay, so is this, on this match point, of course, here for Qadsiah, the comp they're looking for? We did, of course, yeah, see this Hazard get targeted in map 1. So what are they cooking? This is the kind of map where, honestly, it feels pretty reasonable, especially if you're on the offense and you're doing well. Being able to mantle is such a subtle addition, such a subtle part, rather, is Hazard kit, but it really does wonders for his general mobility. The Ramatra?
Yeah, Ziad should be able to combo with Checkmate pretty effectively here, right? Not a lot of ability to get that Ramatra out of the way.
Also, a Jagged Wall here does have application, of course, in the side rooms to trap people in or keep them out. Just cover a wider space than people often expect. UB's Tracer will be pitted against this Lab to Checkmate combo, and KSA, Nemesis form in the front line, is able to run Qadsiah over while presumably they were looking for a window of their own. Funny Astro does go down, but damage is already done, and Checkmate perishes with an explosive bolt lodged in his chest.
So that is one thing that the Mauga ban actually does for Twisted Minds, right? With Yubi, we talked about a little bit earlier, right? With the Sim gone, doesn't exactly want to play Genji, doesn't want, Mei's not really like kind of important in the meta, but Tracer you can play. And if you get rid of the Mauga, that definitely opens up more opportunity for Tracer, right? Tracer does not work well historically with Mauga. We see her in a lot of other different comps, but now you can combo the Tracer with the Ramatra, right? Get a little bit more aggressive and also play a little bit more of an off angle here on the flank.
Yeah, you can play outside of Hazard's sphere of influence pretty easily. You can also see the leaf coming and sort of account for it and avoid that burst damage component of it. KSA, though, getting poked down really low. Nemesis form now taken up for him. Not giving the breather that he needs. Checkmate just got poked down too long. I think Yubi was able to tear strips off him in the end. And Quartz has that bowl shot ready to go. Twisted Minds have fought their way back into this series and now are looking the better team by far.
Yeah, I mean, once this Mauga is like, if you get rid of the Sim, you get rid of the Mauga, Yubi can play Tracer. He is so much more comfortable in this than having to play something else like a Genji. So you get Yubi on a comfort hero, you get Quartz on a Freya, which Quartz has actually played pretty well on the Freya. All things considering, even playing it in Mauga comps. So they're approaching getting that checkpoint here.
Yubi's been a problem for Checkmate in general, just kind of winning that duel across the map and does it once more. The Genji gets through for Qadsiah, but they're not able to leverage it at all. And now that checkpoint is, I mean, it's happening. It's an inevitability at this point. Qadsiah have to concede it, try and sort of impotently hurl rotten tomatoes from that bridge, that high ground, and Yubi's popping off so far. Big pulse bomb there on Labda. Much more to this guy than just the Sim.
And this is going to be a speed run back into this series for Twisted Minds, right? They're going to have both of their support ult on the top of this bridge here. Ziad has really not made any impact on the Hazard thus far, right? And it was actually Twisted Minds in map 1 who banned the Hazard, so definitely we're a little bit scared of it. Is all landing gets hit with a bolt there from Quartz as he gets taken out right as he uses the Ray.
Qadsiah do get themselves a bit of a foothold here, but it's nothing to write home about. Checkmate is still struggling over the course of this map. Obviously, the Annihilation is drawn out of KSA. That feels like pretty high value for them. Spike Guard mostly avoided by Funny Astro, who just does not respect Ziad whatsoever. Labda, though, might be more of an issue for the Brig as a railgun comes in from the periphery, takes him out.
Yeah, but they've already given up to 89 meters, right? You have to feel amazing if you're Twisted Minds here. So Qadsiah will finally get control of the bot. And with the way this map works, Mitch, right? We know this next fight's probably going to happen here towards mid-map. So you're not even really going to gain anything here for Qadsiah. You're going to gain a little bit of meterage, but nothing impactful, right? As actually going to gain nothing as KSA steps out with a barrier there to contest.
Yeah, sets us back to parity. So now you've got to fight through the orbital ray of Twisted Minds. Checkmate looking for a blade. Ooh, watch out. Gets hit with one of those Freya right clicks and in we go. Checkmate wants to threaten a little bit. Here's the orbital ray now being drawn out. Blade is going to be pulled though. Quartz gets in there. Kellex caught inside the bowler shot and Checkmate's done well. Again, a naked Blade Checkmate always good for, you know, 1 or 2. That is not enough.
Yeah, good for 1 or 2, but the bot going in the complete opposite direction is Vortex thrown in here from KSA, trying to actually end up protecting Quartz. That is actually really sick, because KSA, he throws the Vortex over towards Quartz to kind of protect him, turns around, picks up another kill, and then doubles back to protect Quartz and finishes off the player just kind of hunting Quartz down, which is checkmate. So really nice play there from KSA.
I mean, we're starting to see like the skill expression available to you on that Freya as well. Yeah. Very hard to catch in that moment with Quartz. Simple down. So again, Qadsiah able to fight back, but only in their own half of the map, it seems. They even spent a downpour in order to do so, which is all fine and dandy. But they have to generate some forward momentum here instead of just getting reset constantly.
Right, because now you're going to get, what, another fight here towards the mid-map. We're already about halfway through the game. You need to make, you know, start to chain some of these fights together. 2-3 fights in a row. It's even, you know, climb back into this game here if you're Qadsiah. The one benefit would be is you do have this overclock, right? Overclock is a ultimate that just on its own can change the tides, and that's going to be a kill on a symbol with a headshot.
Now we're cooking.
Yeah.
Qadsiah have an opportunity to even up the game off that, basically just that pick on its own. The fact that Landon now doesn't have a long fight where he's forced to use that orbital ray himself puts Qadsiah in a reasonable position, and they've got good answers. It's the Annihilation that's always going to be concerning for them in this fight, and they're going to have to fight at least once more for the checkpoint, but finally, they're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, getting very close to the checkpoint, about like 35% here on the board. Well, Quartz does have this bola shot, right? So bola shot, if you're going to play like, you know, maybe the supports close together, right? Kellex does not have a sound barrier built at the moment. So you have to back out here, right? Because as we talked about on Qadsiah in the past, you don't want to kind of fight into this high ground, right? So you're trying to bait Twisted Minds down into a spot that's a little bit better for you, but it's actually going to be Landon using that orbital array and push right through the choke.
KSA's going to annihilate late, though. If he can find 2 here, he's good. Great stick from Yubi. That's an opening of the window here for the Twisted Minds, but they need a little bit more. Ziad here can just burst KSA down. As good as Annihilation is, it's not enough, especially when there's so much healing there for the hazard. Now, Qadsiah might still have to fight once more for this. But look at that Naked Blade for checkmate that last time was able to find 2 kills. And KSA has decided it's time to move over to the Diva now, as there'll need to be a lot of up and down transition on this part of the map.
What do you think about the Diva switch, though, here? I think the Ramattra was doing pretty decent against the hazard. I think this Diva gives an opportunity here for Qadsiah to get back in the game.
I think it's fine if Qadsiah don't disengage, Matt, but if they move back to the low ground where they give that high ground to Twisted Minds, then the Diva is not nearly as exciting a prospect. Yeah. If they're fighting hot and heavy, like where the bot was at the time, then it's a different story, but I love this. This is so rude.
This
God!
For Qadsiah. I mean, because they actually kind of like semi-won that fight, right? Like you were getting trades there. You could have gotten a little bit more progress. And if you did end up losing the bot, at least it goes back to the middle of the map. But Simple just sends it the complete opposite direction. So that's just a gut punch to Qadsiah. Getting very close to getting that checkpoint now. I mean, that not even in the vicinity.
Devastating. With 2 minutes 30 left on the clock. Not even that first checkpoint yet. Twisted Minds are able to do that and get some extra meterage, so the deck is stacked against Qadsiah. Is there an ace up the sleeve? KSA forced out of position there, taken quite low. The Diva might get awkward in parts of the map like this, but KSA had no choice but to sort of stick to it, so will be an advantage for Qadsiah here. I think we're watching closely to see if KSA thinks to switch.
Yeah, I'm curious kind of the thought process here for Twisted Minds, and if they opt to go with something else, because you'll get closer to the checkpoint here for Qadsiah, and this is going to be Qadsiah's best chance here, Mitch, right? Because you're going to have both support ults. You're going to have the downpour here and overclock. You can take control over this bridge area, right? So deny some of the high ground, and then you can kind of chain that into a blade potentially in the next fight.
Nice moves there from Labda. Obviously takes the extra dash perk, but again, the bot's being stolen away.
About to run away.
That is not good. Orbital Ray being committed now. Twisted Mind saying, no, you're going to fight us down here on the low ground. Ziad up on the high ground, a little bit low, but Kellex's sound barrier, it sort of inoculates Qadsiah against any sort of big burst damage moments. The bot's still moving. It needs to be dealt with. Oh, the bowl shot checkmate. Deflect that, bro.
That is such a huge play there from Quartz, because on the opposite side, right, if they end up losing a few players in the box that comes back in that direction, Orbital Ray plus Blade on the menu, a real opportunity for Qadsiah. But he comes right around the corner, he domes Landon, then bola shots, checkmate. Now he's already, I mean, you see how fast Freya builds some of these ultimates, already at 40%.
And he isn't even like maxed out on his passive there either. So just doing a lot of damage in general. Freya obviously definitely rewarded for getting, you know, final blows in that sense, but very, very good with his mid-range poke. Now Qadsiah, well, shoulders slumped. They trundle back off to work again. Once more, they need to find a way to win sort of multiple consecutive fights here against the Twisted Minds team, who barely gives them one at best. The Quartz is down, jumped on there. That's the link up between Checkmate and the Ziad you referred to earlier, Matt. They are able to put it together. And KSA, healthy as he is still. Oh God, he got landed. That's not good. You can't allow that.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have players coming off a spawn here for TM. I don't even think you need to fight it though, right? It just buys more time here. And now Landon's gonna have to move off of the Juno and go over to the Kiri, right? Because in a weird situation where he needs to kind of use that TP to get through the wall so he can get back in the fight.
All right, overtime now. How Qadsiah have such a long total to chase. And Yubi's pulse bombs, for the most part, have been pretty perfect. Might just stick one to Xian if he gets low enough. Meanwhile, KSA traversing high ground and low, trying to control that bridge if possible. Oh, Quartz is too clean with it. Lambda taken down. There was a boulder shot involved there somewhere. We didn't see it, but it didn't matter. Quartz is having an outsized impact on yet another fight on this Freya. Twisted Minds, the prep they put into get that hero integrated in their comp pays off, and we are headed to a decider map.
Oh, as Twisted Minds have stormed back into this series, right? I know using a good job with the ban phase through the last two maps as now Qadsiah, everything they kind of work for on the line here is, I definitely think the Freya at range, right? You see it there, especially in that last, final moments where Quartz is up on the bridge and Ladd is down by the truck. He's just so far away that it's just obviously like he's a floating target in the sky is Quartz, but still it's just the effective range I feel like plays a little bit better for Freya there.
Oh, you're also playing well within the damage fall-off range of the enemy Sojourn as well. All right. And obviously, when you have those charged shots, they're much more reliable at those longer distances. It was a pretty clean kill, though, whichever way you slice it. I think it was set up by the boulder shot, though, to kind of make sure that there was a non-moving target for Quartz to punish. But glad we get some Freya highlights here. A lot of bowlers shots being developed here. This was a nice one, obviously comboing with that orbital ray that was thrown down.
Oh, so dude, look at that. Look at his ult percentage. Do you see that? He uses it and then I guess gets like a final blow to like trigger the passive and was already at 30% right away.
Yeah, it just doesn't take long at all. You can see, it sort of drains that little bar and gives it sort of straight back to you. So you can very quickly start building up your next ultimate. I've got to say as well, the UV Tracer, pretty clean. First time in this series we've actually seen Twisted Minds move off the Symmetra composition. They've allowed the Genji through, and Checkmate honestly found it really uncomfortable trying to deal with the Tracer outside of the maybe more expected Symmetra.
And yeah, with the Symmetra ban for Qadsiah, right? It kind of sets up when TM bans the Malga to be able to play that Tracer. So I'm curious now with this first ban from Qadsiah where they decide to go, right? They've already banned, keep track of it in the series, Torb, Lucio, Ramatra, and Sim, right? So those are the heroes that are off the table for Qadsiah. Would you get rid of Malga if you're Qadsiah?
I don't think so. I actually think that they were happy on a control map to play the Malga mirror. In fact, I feel like they got better once they were able to force, KSA to switch over to the D.Va when they had the Malga setup. So,
because you're not worried about them banning Genji, right? Because they've already used that ban on the Genji, so that is kind of free, right? Because I was like, maybe there's a world in which you ban Tracer, but that's really only effective if Malga's out. So.
Yeah, you could ban the Freya if you wanted to. Dorado's it's a very reasonable hazard map. We actually saw, I want to say it was Nightmare play hazard on this map over in NA, on occasion in the past, and looked pretty good. So that's our Qadsiah pick here.
It's like,
I wonder if they're looking at the Freya, if they're looking at the Tracer, because both those DPS were specifically problematic for them to deal with, and obviously the Ramatra ban is not on the table anymore. So targeting the tank role is harder.
And neither of these teams play like Winston, right? So if there was to be another tank, it would be like D.Va in the mix, right? So D.Va would be kind of probably the pick for both of these teams to like access high ground and kind of like battle over that. And also, even when Winston's in the mix, right, we do see a decent amount of D.Va like trying to duel the Winston up on the high ground here. So potentially some D.Va action. I wonder, this is always a map where Quartz would pull out the Widowmaker, right? And Quartz able to take over games on that hero. Specifically on this map, but Dorado is also fantastic for Genji, right? And Genji is going to make it through because Qadsiah is not getting rid of it, and Twisted Minds has already used it, right? So Genji going to make it through here, and you imagine Checkmate has an easier time.
Yep, I mean, and the Trace is super reasonable on this map, despite the presence of that high ground. She always has a way to sort of get up there, assume it herself. So the flanks are always relatively potent. Tank-wise, yeah, we might get Hazard versus D.Va. In the past, we've seen D.Va lose out in that matchup on Dorado. But again, you know, probably a little bit more debatable depending on day. So obviously, it's an Qadsiah pick. When we sort of go back and pick maps already chosen from the pool, it doesn't sort of reset the ban. So yeah, the Freya is removed here. I think Qadsiah just don't feel like they're quite ready to integrate her fully, and Quartz was an absolute nuisance.
And that'll ban D.Va. Okay, so we were talking about D.Va potentially being the other option in terms of like the tank to get towards the high ground here. So D.Va gone. All the supports, really, the supports throughout this entire series, right? Only targeted, you know, in map number 2 with the Lucio ban from Qadsiah. Otherwise, they've gone through the entire time. So D.Va will go here in this game 5 from Twisted Minds, gonna prevent Qadsiah from using the hero to try and contest some high ground.
Yeah, I feel like the supports only actually get looked at like heavily for bans in series where teams have like an Ana player, because it's like you're either trying to like protect in that support category if you're the Ana team, or you're targeting her, or you're targeting the Kiriko, right? So it's like it's a dual protect, but also like, you know, take out the cleanse factor. Both these teams have, yeah, I mean, we've seen the Iliari look, of course, in the past on King's Row from Twisted Minds. It was really sick. I think defensively, there's obviously so many ways to abuse a healing pylon, and because we're not dealing with a Winston team on the side of Qadsiah, maybe it's harder for them to sort of get rid of those pylons. There's so many just like little walls and nooks that you can place those in, and you get the Ramatra matchup here against the Hazard, something I think the KSA is happy enough about.
Right, because you know, obviously the vortex of the Ramatra are pretty good at like slowing down the Hazard, right? Hazard has like that leap and can like wall climb, right? But doesn't have a ton of like vertical mobility as we've talked about, but can be even further grounded. And I also think with the defense here for Twisted Minds first, having that Ramatra with a shield up in the high ground, just like really difficult to dislodge as you see Ziad try and go up there, but the sim turrets from UB already in place.
Yeah, sim also great here, right? A ton of stuff, like a lot of deployables here, healing and damaging turrets respectively. Twisted Minds with a really strong bulwark in the front line in the form of the Ramatra are going to be pretty hard to shift. Again, a lot's going to come down to this Sojo matchup. So at least Labda doesn't have to deal with the Freya anymore. Taking on Quartz in a mirror, though, is something that a few players will feel confident about doing.
Yeah. It's kind of odd to be in a scenario where you want to force Quartz into a head-to-head with you on like a hit scan, right? As Symbol going to pick up the Ilari yet again here on D. So we saw it a little bit on King's Row on the offensive side of things. Now we see it on defense here. A nice outburst trying to knock back Ziad, but Checkmate's there to finish off the kill.
Yeah, I mean, they were both there, right? Once again, it's a link up between the Genji and the Hazard, something that Qadsiah are really going to have to lean into heavily. And probably just ignore the Ramatra, especially when he has that Nemesis form available. Seeing KSA go down last in this fight should tell you everything you need to know about how confident Qadsiah feel about trying to burst him out.
The KSA was just using the Nemesis form, right, in the block inside of the doorway, just trying to keep it contested. And they just double back for him, right? Just go put pressure on the back line, put pressure on the Quartz, and then go back the other way and try and finish him off.
Okay, checkpoint here for Qadsiah, pretty reasonable. You know, considering how defensively slanted this Twisted Minds comp is with like a strong poke core, they're able to find a way to unravel it. Easier said than done, I feel. Twisted Minds want to take another fight pretty quickly, though. KSA is already up on that high ground as soon as that position. Quartz wraps around behind. The defenders here looking to flip the map as usual with this sim. But here comes Ziad, pushes up and actually splits Quartz away from his teammate there. You might be under some pressure here, and Qadsiah saying, no. None of this. We're going to keep you trapped now while the card gets moving.
Well, yeah, you try and keep these players alive, right? You can just kind of dip back into the spawn, try and pick up some health as Quartz still here, so you finally do end up picking him off. A little bit of it is because you just let him live for so long. You know, Simple does have the Captive Sun. You don't have that bolo shot to combo with it, which we saw in King's Row. That was a really sick combo. But as we move here, you see only one kill so far here for Twisted Minds.
Yeah. And big deeps out of Simple, but unfortunately that's not really been enough to move the needle for them. Just Iliari things. Oh, that's nasty. Quartz picked off there. Thought he was safe. TP's up to the high ground. Here's a captive Sun with a wall that Simple can dance to try and stay safe, but I don't know if there's any connection there at all. Great wall there for Yubi. Forces Simple to come a bit further forward than he otherwise would like, and now have to play in a position like this where he can be exploited eventually by Checkmate as Calyx gets involved in that elimination. Things are snowballing a little bit now for Qadsiah. This annihilation looks a bit uncomfortable for KSA as he is the only player on the card.
Oh, this is just a speed run, it feels like, through the second part of the map for Qadsiah. You know, Funny Astro does end up getting Labda here towards the end as Labda pushes up, probably trying to get players out of the spawn in. Funny Astro has an orbital ray, so potentially you come out here and challenge just as Yubi gets a touch on the card. It's going to be an overclock as well. If you can save Ray, it would be massive.
Caught the downpour. Qadsiah is inside of it. Looks like Zia was having to use Spike Guard just to get the extra damage done, but oh yeah, the Malga is back. Twisted Minds now. KSA gets in there with a nice little stomp and force Checkmate into a bit of a premature deflect. Orbital Ray here may not even have been necessary, but you can see Twisted Minds saw the Kitsune rush and wanted to match it.
Yeah, I think you just trade it if you are Qadsiah, right? And I think it's more of a benefit for Qadsiah. They see the orbital ray go because it kind of puts your ultimates back in a similar spot in terms of supports, right? So a little bit easier to track here moving forward, and still a decent amount of time.
Ziad looking to fight UB every time he turns up. He's off the sim, of course. High ground now gained, but no great way to keep it. Yeah, Ziad just has to make space now across the map, which is awkward because he's very much in no man's land. And here comes KSA. Nice jagged wall. That is going to stop the Malga in his tracks and give you opportunities now to just punish him out in the open. KSA's going to run away.
So we'll see now if KSA can end up living, which he does. He gets out of the way. So Ziad just trying to hunt for targets here, but landed on the opposite side of the map, finds two with Checkmate. They finish off another. So although we're on with Ziad as he's trying to chase players down, it is Checkmate and landed on the opposite side of the map, going pretty huge.
I definitely think that like they're able to exploit the switch of KSA to Malga in that situation, right? He is so full committed that if he gets a jagged wall thrown in front of him and then just is forced to awkwardly stand out in the open, he generally is sitting duck. And he got so split out from the rest of Twisted Minds there that, you know, Qadsiah had a lot of space, were pretty comfortable, just keep their backline alive. Now 2:46 on the clock. Qadsiah hurtling towards the end of the map. We'll have matched Kitsune rushes in this fight. Yubi's looking for another big pulse like we saw on Qadsiah.
Yeah, no, you know, potentially, right? You're going to get this overclock here for Quartz as well on the defensive side of things. You're just trying to kite some of this damage as all. I mean, that is a lot that goes into KSA. They're trying to follow it up. So you see Checkmate, he kind of like dives on in there. Pulse Bomb connects, but I believe that is cleansed off.
All right, work to do. Soundberry here for Qadsiah. They want to try and convert on this with KSA turning tail and heading back to spawn. The odds of that are looking pretty good. Funny Astro, for all his footwork, is not going to be able to get out to safety. This will set up a last fight scenario and a potentially nasty combo here between Downpour and Blade. As Qadsiah try and shut the door and get a respectable time bank on Dorado.
Yes, a downpour would be massive here, maybe even combo with this Blade as the Blade just comes out, pushes people back towards that spawn door. It'll be Quartz ending up using the overclock here as now the downpour comes in, connects with a few.
A lot of people got caught. Remember, downpour affects you inside buildings still, but there was nobody who could actually get to Quartz at the time. So now he'll be able to take it off angle. You can see Labda looking for him, always trying to hunt down this Sojourn, reduce his impact over the battle. I think he's done enough. Yep, just hold up the Soj and sneak the card in behind them. It's over 90 seconds here of time bank for Qadsiah, all things considered. Really solid attack side.
So we'll see now for Qadsiah if they can put it together on the defense here to finish things off, right? As a minute 35, pretty good in terms of the time bank that they have here. And they built up as Twisted Minds. Is there anything they could do? I thought even Yubi was pretty effective on the Tracer, right? I didn't really see anything. I think it's just more of like Qadsiah being able to use that combination of the Hazard and the Genji that was really giving them troubles. I don't know if it's like anything particularly with the comp-wise, at least in my opinion, for Twisted Minds.
I mean, there were a couple of, I think Twisted Minds, because of the pace of the game, get forced into some awkward spots.
Yeah.
I like the Iliari setup on defense. The problem is that like you have to constantly reset like a lot of those turrets from the Sim and the Iliari because the Hazard is always moving up the line of scrimmage, always been pushing up, always, you know, forcing you to sort of drop back and start to lose effectiveness on those things. And, you know, well, we ended up seeing, like, I think Simple just got blown up. Tried to, like, use that outburst, but when there's a Hazard and a Genji both diving on you, you know, it's a bit of a impromptu dive. It's not like the fully orchestrated ones we used to see with the Winston comps, but it's still more than enough to take an individual out of the fight. So maybe greedy to bring the Iliari into the comp, especially when you don't have like a guaranteed fight win combo with the bowler shot, but I think it looked fine.
Right, and I was going to say, it looks like, behind the scoreboard there, it's going to be almost a mirror matchup, right? But it will be Yubi going back to playing the Sim. Maybe this is a TP up to the high ground and then a swap, or we see him play Tracer, and it'll be checkmate on that Genji yet again. So this has kind of been like a lot of the series, right? This Sim and how Twisted Minds tries to like work it into some of these comps versus Qadsiah clearly favoring a Genji look and it being quite effective when we see them pull it out.
Absolutely. TM feel like they do need some form of, that sort of vertical mobility here. And like you mentioned, I feel like they might be playing into Qadsiah's sort of wheelhouse here. And it's like, Qadsiah respectfully, like they want to play that market area as much as they can. It's great for line of sight breaking. It's a good staging ground for more of these little sort of impromptu dives. Checkmate and Ziad. We're looking for KSA there. Simple's extra low as well. This is awkward. If he gets dragged out longer for Twisted Minds, they're going to lose a lot of ground and give a lot of ult charge.
And I think, though, for me, the Sim is the Sim almost worse to play in this type of comp, in your opinion, than like a Mauga one? I kind of feel like it is, right? Like, because at least the Mauga comps, when they're playing Mauga head-to-head, like, there's clearly
play with the Mauga
that you can charge up, and play with it. I just don't know how, like, you interact here with the hazard. Like, you can obviously TP yourself and get in, right? But there's not any, like, big beefy target that you can end up building, like, significant ramp damage with, right?
100%. I mean, I think it feels awkward sometimes. UB can't always be in step with KSA. That's obviously the plan for Twisted Minds, is to almost use their Sim TPs like an alternative to the dive, or at least use it to cross the gap and then get a closer setup to jump on in. But no one's really there to follow KSA as fast as they would like. They're relying on the space to be created so the Quartz can hit these shots, and UB can fight frontline here, but it doesn't look like it's working.
What's pretty nice though, they actually use a TP on hit, and Qadsiah thinks they're fully committing, and they end up using the Kitsune Rush, and TM just TPs out, right? So you get that, Kitsune Rush out for free, but you end up losing KSA when you drop your own Kitsune Rush. So even though it was pretty good to force out Landon's Kitsune, you get absolutely nothing for it. I mean, it ends up kind of, turning on you in the end.
And it feels like Kelix's Sound Barrier is a worthwhile investment to answer Simple's Kitsune Rush. The only situation it does leave you in is that, Funny Astro has one to spend in this next fight, but the win condition here for Twisted Minds feels really different, right, to what Qadsiah are trying to do. It's only a small difference in comp, but Qadsiah want to, actually dive and commit with Checkmate and Ziad, whereas KSA has to open up space without putting himself in too much of a dangerous spot, Matt.
Yes, I know Lambda will find one, right? So here is it flips. This is UB's wall, as there is no sound barrier because they end up losing the beat. And but so you would have potentially even saved the beat though, right? Because you do have this checkmate blade coming. Maybe the blade would have been invested there, right? And then that sound barrier come down. But now you have an opportunity here, Mitch, right? Do you use your Kitsune Rush if you're Landon and try and up the pace of your Qadsiah to force them to beat, and then let Checkmate just run crazy, right?
I honestly think that I think you probably want to be reactive here if you can, as Qadsiah with this Kitsune Rush. I think you play for the increased healing throughput, and we can't ignore Downpour. It's very powerful here because Yubi doesn't have the mobility to necessarily avoid being caught in that, right? It's not like a Genji who can sort of dash away if he sees it coming. So here's a Downpour from Ziad. Comes out after KSA used his. Yeah, I mean, that's with Sound Barrier. So here's the Kitsune Rush that's used reactively as we expected, and guess what? There's a blade waiting to be drawn. Funny Astro's nowhere to go. Quartz again, lacking mobility to escape, and now Qadsiah, like I mentioned, slightly different comp, very different objective, and very different outcome.
And it feels like every time in this series we ended up with a Genji versus Sim matchup, and regardless of the other characters, did not matter. We got KSA on the ball here trying to get a touch.
Astro's getting farmed. He's absolutely beamed there as he tries to pick out a spawn. What a convincing way to cap off the series here for Qadsiah. Know their favor when it comes to these hazard mirrors, where Twisted Minds can't play Romancho, they can't play this ground-born composition. Already exposing some pretty big compositional weaknesses for Twisted Minds early on in the season. Theoretically sending them packing with a lot to work on. Sound barrier here for Qadsiah, all they need now, and that's a curious time to pause the game, but we have a disconnect for TM. Someone probably should tell them that, Quartz, you have to stay in the game until it ends. Otherwise, we get a situation like this.
Yeah, there's a good chance that Quartz is not disconnected, has potentially left the lobby, and maybe that's the game.
We give the benefit of the doubt here, but if you look really close, it's pretty much unwinnable at that point. Twisted Minds, and sometimes people leave the lobby. You know what I mean?
We're playing the victory music here, so maybe, yeah, we got the victory music going. So,
can I ask producers? Can we just hand them the dub?
I don't think we have the authority to do that.
I know. We are waiting for confirmation on competitive ops.
Comp ops, comp ops. Looking at the state of the game, though, I would say, with a high degree of certainty, that Qadsiah was going to win.
I also can further extending the benefit of the doubt. Quartz might have just DC'd, like legitimately. It is a very because like,
it is kind
I don't know
funky.
Quartz to be that kind of player, by the way. He's actually like very like,
chill
kind
usually.
Of, exactly. So I think honestly could be honest mistake or legitimate DC, but we are inclined obviously to call the game there and then. You can sort of if he he's coming back. Wait, what?
We're back. Here we go.
They've got another DC anyway.
Here we go.
Okay, don't just forget about it. This doesn't make any sense, dude. Did we really just do that? I love my job.
I think that's probably the best way I think we've ever ended a game.
I love my job, bro. I've seen a lot in my time. I've seen like servers being irreparably crashed because of like ultimate comps. I've seen like every possible future of Overwatch. This one though, Ash, this one's a new one.
Ash, how thrilling was that ending right there? Not the entire game, just that last few seconds.
We had our "we're so back" moment, and then it was the "we're so over" moment within the span of a couple of seconds. But anticipated that end for Qadsiah to take that series. I think that it was quite the wild ride though, because Qadsiah, they had a really strong start those first two maps that we saw. Then Twisted Minds looked incredibly dominant with Quartz being on that Freya that we had to see like Qadsiah end up banning out. But overall, Mitch, I think that Qadsiah, they looked like they had this last one in the bag for sure.
Yeah, I think again they set a map that you can't play Malga Ramatra into like constantly, right? It's just not possible. It's very frustrating to try and do that. And I think that's totally fair. I mean, this is what happens when you win the first map of a series, is that generally like you get to go to map 5 with the map pick of your own. So there's a lot of value in taking that first control map away. And yeah, I just don't, while I feel like Qadsiah don't have a solid answer to like the Ramatra Malga looks always. Ramatra I think was more of an issue for them. They do have a nice looking hazard comp. And that was something that was being targeted in the very first map of the series. You saw like, Qadsiah still won that map in Amalgam Mirror. I don't know if they expected to win that one. Or get that in the bloody highlights. Good, that's good gear, that is. So, I think that, the right choice was made by Twisted Minds in terms of that first map ban. And they'd be mad they couldn't get that Oasis win.
So here's my thing though, Ash, is, Qadsiah, you end up winning the series, right? But I think any other team in EMEA is able to watch this match and know exactly what these teams want to do in every single map and have a great idea on how to ban it out or limit it on every single map, right? So I think obviously these two teams are willing to like play nice and go head to head and play that type of style because that's what they want. But as time moves on, I think it's going to get tougher.
It definitely will. I do even wonder if there were questions of if they could have gotten it done on Qadsiah as well, with how quickly Twisted Minds were able to get to 89 meters. And then it was honestly quite a grueling crawl back coming out from Qadsiah to try and catch back up. But at the end of the day, Qadsiah, they take it in 3-2. And let's take a look at our interview. We're going to have Landon